before we get started?
Sure. Thanks for having me on, Curtis. I've been working in foreclosure auctions since about 2007. I've attended nearly every auction in Travis County until, with Roddy's, we started to expand into other regions. So I've helped to found all of our new counties we've added. And with the company, I manage all of our data, our research, and our auction teams to help you guys be successful at auction. They're the guys wearing red shirts like this.
Yeah, no, it's exciting. Yeah, Paul came on a couple of years ago, and since then we've added probably 10 or 15 auction coverage locations. It's been really exciting. So Paul runs all of our auction operations, answers all of our difficult questions, and makes sure that the auctions go off without a hitch. And then we've got Mr. Jack Zagunis in the house. Jack, everybody probably knows you. You talk to all of our members on a near weekly basis, it seems like. Can you give, for the people who have not talked to you, though, can you give a little bit of your background?
So my background is in sales, and then I moved into real estate and became a buyer for a few different large companies like Homevestors and some other ones. And I went out to people's houses, talked to them, sat down at kitchen tables, determined if we could possibly buy their house for an investor price, and then locked up the deals. And that's mostly my experience. And right now I'm basically here to help you do the same thing.
Yeah, Jack's our VP of customer success. And really all we want to do as a company is to help our members be successful. And particularly this webinar is to make sure that you're successful and you're prepared for the upcoming foreclosure auction. So that's coming up. That's this coming Tuesday. We call it Super Tuesday in the Roddy office and the Roddy house. So we're excited too. So just a couple of things. If you guys have any questions, really that's what we're here to do, is to answer any questions that you have regarding foreclosures, and particularly the auction, any questions you have on getting ready. So put them in the comments below. If you put them on now, we'll answer them live. If you're watching this webinar after we've gone live, go ahead and put them in the comments in there, and we'll make sure that we answer those in a timely fashion. So we want to kind of just talk about the genesis of foreclosures right now while we're waiting for some questions. About 3 weeks ago, it would have been about 2.5 weeks now, the deadline to file for foreclosures was happened for the November auction, right, Paul? And so we've got teams gathering postings every day. They up until that deadline, they were working on the November auction. They're working on the December auction now. But up until that deadline, trustees were filing in all 254 counties in the state of Texas. We were out there going to the courthouses, talking to trustees, getting that data, and uploading to our website. That list was finalized, and then since then, our members have been getting ready for auction, trying to figure out what properties they want to look at auction. Paul, can you kind of talk about what this last week should be like for members trying to get ready for auction, to really, if they're trying to buy a house? So we've, up until that 2.5 weeks, people were filtering properties, kind of finalizing that list, but there's a lot more research that goes into it once you have that narrowed down list. Can you talk a little bit about that?
That's right, Curtis. Once that list is finalized and our members have trimmed down to their ideal properties, let's say your top 15, top 20 properties, they want to be doing things like checking on title, checking for other liens. They want to be doing drive reports, driving by, taking pictures of the house, seeing the condition, noting if it's occupied or not. They also want to be checking our free live updates. That's something we do every day, and we even do it now throughout auction day.
Yep.
That live updates, as we know, shows you if a property's been canceled, so you take it right off of your research list. If we have an opening bid, it's on there, and often we update that opening bid the day of auction. They want to be trimming that down to those specific properties. If you have a bad title, you scratch it off. If you have a good title, you prepare your bids for it. If it's like what we call a yellow title, you want to budget in that possible extra fees that might come from something like a tax lien. So this is the last chance to be doing all that title research, the drive reports, the pictures, occupancy status, and we can help that with our members both one-on-one a la carte, or in certain counties, we can do our Roddy Insights to provide them all that information for every property at one flat rate.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. We're super excited to be launching this Roddy Insights. Right now, we've got it for Dallas, Tarrant, and Bexar counties. It's been awesome. I think it's going to be a real game changer. for our members. It should help. It's really the same data and the same services that we have used in the past to buy properties at auction. And so you guys get the same access. Everybody, it should put everybody on the level playing field, right? So people that in the past that haven't had the ability to drive all the properties, to do title on all the properties, now instead of just being able to do analysis on 10 or 15 properties, you can do it on the whole 200 or 300. So it's we're excited about that. And so Jack, talking about like our members getting ready, what are the things that when a member says, "Hey, auction's next week, what should I do? What do I need to know? What do I need to do in order to be prepared for the auction?" What are those easy questions?
Yeah, there's the 5 steps that Paul talked about. Make sure you're driving the property or narrowing down your list, driving the property, doing a CMA, doing title search, and then getting your checks ready for auction. We're in one of the few months that we've had in the last while where you don't have to have your checks done today. So because Monday's not a national holiday, so you have Monday to get your checks. Yeah. But what you really want to do is you also want to prepare for those things that the professionals do that maybe the new people are not doing. And that is getting stuff in your car the day before the auction, making sure that you're ready to go. Making sure that you've got your cell phone charger and stuff like that. Making sure that you've got some water and a little bit of food for the auction day, that you're not taking those bathroom breaks and possibly missing deals because of that. So just getting prepared. Also, if you're there and you're a wholesaler as well, and you're also just kind of checking out the auction, make sure you have some of your deals lined up that you can show investors because you're going to be networking there. Bring some business cards, stuff like that. It's a great place to go and hang out. A lot of the veterans that I know, at least in the counties that I've been to, they bring lawn chairs. So throw a lawn chair in the car as well.
Yeah, that's a lot of good things you touched on there. We had, I want to start off with, I guess, an investor. Like a lot of investors know what a RIA is, right? The Real Estate Investing Associations. Everyone goes to a RIA. A lot of investors go to RIAs. There's probably in the state of Texas, there's hundreds of them held every month across the state. But we don't have like ever. I don't think we've ever made an emphasis of like using the auction as the like really the ultimate networking place for real estate investors. That's where you're going to find people with almost no experience, with a ton of experience. That's where you're going to be able to ask questions. You've got all of the Roddy's members are going to be there. So I like that you bring your business cards. I would suggest people treating the auction like a networking event, going up, talking to people. Now, some people don't want to talk at the auction. As we know, the foreclosures are a little bit competitive right now, but there's a lot of people out there that are happy to help. I mean, we've got our members or the Roddy's team members that's what we're there to do, right? We love to help. We want you to be successful. We want you to be comfortable at the auction. A lot of people go to the auction for the first time, and maybe this November auction is the first auction you've ever been to, right? And you're not really there to buy anything. You're just there to figure out what's going on. And that's a great thing to do. And it's very important to make sure that you leave that auction knowing exactly what happened. And so when you go to the December or the January auction, you're confident in what you need to do. And so I like that point, Jack. The other thing Jack brought up was cashier's checks or getting your checks ready. Jack, can you talk a little bit more about we get that question probably once a day. I feel like, hey, how do I make these checks out? Like, do I get one big check? Do I have time after the auction? Talk a little bit about what that process looks like.
Yeah. So if you need to go to your bank before, and sometimes it does take a while, so you may not want to go the morning of.
Yep.
And what most people do is they get cashier's checks made out to themselves or their entity in denominations that kind of look like a wallet. So say you're planning on spending up to $300,000 at the auction. For example, you could pick, 100, 250s, 4 20s, a 10, and 2 5s. If you win a property for say $296,000, then you give them the whole $300,000 that you have. They'll mail you back a check for $4,000. So you can overbid, you just can't underbid.
Yeah, and it's important to get those different denominations, especially if you're talking about bidding on multiple properties, right? So if you get that first property for $150,000 and the second property comes up for you end up being able to get that for $140,000, but you only have two $100,000 checks, you wouldn't have, in theory, enough cashier's checks available. So I always suggest bringing a lot of small denominations so that you can pay as close to that as possible and have enough capital left over for upcoming auctions or the future auctions. Now, if you, like Jack said, if you overpay, if it's $296,000 and you give the trustee $300,000, they're going to usually mail you back a check for that difference within I think usually the standard is 1 to 2 weeks. That's in my experience what that's been, but it's going to be within 30 days. So you should have those funds back for the upcoming auction. But we're really talking about if you're trying to buy multiple properties at once, there's a little bit of strategy that goes into how you handle those checks. You want to give as little away at first so that you have as much for the next auctions or to go to a different county in that day. So, Jack, we also had somebody ask, you mentioned doing your CMAs, title and drive, and we had somebody ask what a CMA is. Can you go a little bit more into what that is?
CMA is a comparative market analysis. There's several ways to do it. Probably the best CMA you're going to get is just an appraiser's value of the property, but those are going to be very expensive and sometimes take a while to get the appraiser to do it. Even an appraiser's value of the property is still an opinion, so it may not even sell for that price. Second best thing to use is the MLS, or the multiple listing service? Is that what it is? And that's realtors have access to that. So if you know a realtor, you can say, hey, I'm interested in these 10 properties. Well, you do, and they might charge you for them, or they might do it as a relationship thing so that they could list properties for you in the future. So a realtor could do it for you. If you have to do a CMA on your own, then there's some tools with Roddy's we have you can do it with. You can try to figure it out through Zillow, roughly what it's worth. Tax value, you can kind of get close. But really what you're looking for is not what the tax value is, not what it's sold for in the past, but what it would currently sell for on the market today. And not only that, but what it would sell for with the repairs you're making it. So if you find that all the homes in the neighborhood have laminate flooring and old windows, and they're all selling for this price, then you may choose to not overbuild the neighborhood and do that as well. But if you see that, hey, in this neighborhood there's 6 houses that have sold and they have brand new windows, brand new roofs, they have in the photos you can see what they look like, and they've just got completely redone, then okay, I need to have a bigger repair budget, but I get this bigger price at the end of the day. So
right.
It's not an exact science. It takes a little bit of practice, and you could be wrong, but you don't really want to thread the needle. Say you think it's worth either $290,000 or $300,000, and so you're saying, okay, I'll bid up to $270,000, but then it goes up to $280,000. And you're like, well, it could be worth that $300,000. Maybe I can get some money out of it. You're really, you're going to get close with your CMA, and then you just want to maybe err on the side of being a little too low.
Yeah, I mean, the one other thing to keep into account when you're talking is not really talking about CMAs, but talking about how you're getting ready for auction and figuring out what you can actually pay for something. A lot of people fail to think about a lot of the extra costs. So traditionally somebody will think about, you're getting ready for auction. Let's say a house is worth $300,000. There's going to be $20,000 worth of construction. And a lot of people say, okay, I want to make $20,000, so I'll actually pay $260,000. You don't think about the other costs associated with this. We have a lot of information on our Facebook and our YouTube about estimating other costs, but I just want to make sure everybody's clear on some of the other things to think about. So when you're underwriting your properties for this upcoming auction, what are other things to think about? HOA transfer costs. A lot of times, especially in Texas, where we have a lot of MUDs and PIDs and SUDs, a lot of UDs going on. So in Texas, there's a lot of transfer costs with the HOA. I know I sold a house in Denton County and a PID out there called Savannah, and I had to make $1,000 donation to a charity. Didn't know about that. And then you have your HOA transfers and all sorts of stuff. So make sure you know what you're looking at whenever you're doing these transfers. A lot of the MLSs will have the information on what that looks like. So I talked to a real estate agent or real estate professional to figure out a little bit more of those information. Property taxes, that's something, Cynthia just asked that question. Are you supposed to be ready for property taxes right after you purchase it? That's a really great question. The answer is it really depends. So if you use Roddy's Insights or Roddy Title analysis, you're actually going to know going into this what the outstanding property tax is, right? So if you buy a property that has delinquent property taxes, yes, you want to go pay those property taxes right after the auction to make sure that you're not going to continue to incur fees or even risk a foreclosure. But if those property taxes are caught up, you should be, you would really just pay that whenever they're due the next time. So if it's a flip, a lot of times, you don't have to worry about paying for that until you flip it, and then title will take care of that during close of escrow. If it's going to be a rental, then you would just want to check with the tax department to make sure you know what you're doing there. Other things. Paul, can you talk about like some of the other like liens that we see on properties that people are not usually aware of, that you do need to be aware of, that you might have to pay after a foreclosure auction?
Sure. So in our title searches, whether we're doing a la carte one-off properties for you, or we're offering you our all-inclusive Roddy insights this month for counties like Tarrant, Dallas, and Bear, we make sure that we're looking for all kinds of liens. Make sure that you're buying a first lien, not a second lien, first of all.
Yep.
See if there are any judgments that you'll have to pay off, any lawsuits, list pendants that are pending. You want to see if there are county property taxes, if there are city liens, if there are IRS federal tax liens, if you have even mechanics liens. You want to make sure you have all this information out so you can categorize all of that, see what is going to affect your title or not, and we'll help you with that. When you order a title with us, you get a red, yellow, and a green. And we'll classify how all those go so you know what to budget into your max bid. But it's very important, because if you get stuck with let's say a $20,000 judgment, that could wipe out your entire margin. Or if you have a federal tax lien for $30,000, that wipes out your margin. So it's very important to check those things and ask us either on chat is probably the best way to reach us. A little bottom box in the bottom right of our website. And we can help you with any of these properties, searching for any of these liens.
Yeah, I mean, and not all liens don't necessarily create issues, right? Like an HOA lien that was filed, after the first lien that's getting foreclosed on, that's going to be wiped out with that foreclosure transaction. But you want to know about these going ahead of time. We probably won't talk too much more about liens and title stuff right now. I think I could talk about that with Paul at least for another 5 or 6 hours. But if you want more information, Thomas and I actually did a webinar about a week ago where we talked about Roddy's Insights. We talked about what we offer with that as far as title analysis and drives. I'd encourage you to go watch that. Paul, we just got another question from Paul that says, he asked, how does he check liens, and what is the best site to check them? Can you kind of just high overview? We can't spend too much time on this, but just like, what is the general process? I know somebody can check liens on their own, but they can also buy analysis from us as well, right?
Right. For new beginners who've never done this before, if you don't know how to research your county's official public records or property tax databases and really know how to detail that out and see what applies to your property, what applies to your borrower or not, then I highly recommend you go through us. You can also follow our webinar on our website under resources. It gives you a good intro, but it's a very niche, specific art to know how to, science really, to know how to look into these titles and liens.
Yeah.
So they can always go to roddytitle.com and submit their properties there. Or you can just go to our website at the chat box in the bottom right over here and shoot a message and say, hey, I'm looking for title. And they can we'll get with them immediately about that. But in general, you're looking up an OPR, you're making sure your grantor matches everything that you're detailing out, that the legal description matches. Because some people might have multiple properties. Or let's say if you're looking for a John Smith, that's going to be very difficult to find out what applies to your property and what doesn't. So all these different factors come into play: the middle name, the person's date of birth, their social security number sometimes to tie it to that property. But essentially it's OPR, tax records, things like that you're researching.
Yep. Awesome. And all right, so just a couple other things to keep in mind when you're doing this underwriting. Like Paul said, liens, just be aware of city liens, Mo liens. Usually that's not going to be a big issue. It's going to be a couple $100. There's HOA transfer taxes. There's closing costs. So closing costs can be anywhere from 3 to 9%. Depends on if you're a real estate agent, if you're able to handle some of the commission on that. A lot of people don't really take into account their financing costs either. So what I mean is, like, if I were to go to auction and I just bring, let's say, $200,000 cash, it's my cash, and I can buy a house with that, my financing costs are next to none, right? Because because it's there's really no, I'm not paying any fees to get that cash out. But what a lot of people do is they're borrowing money. They've got partners. They've got some sort of investor that's going to let them refinance it. And you're paying points and you're paying interest, right? And so make sure that you take into account those holding costs of points, interest, property insurance, property taxes, all that stuff. So move on to, we're past underwriting. We've got people that have done underwriting. We want to know the next kind of thing to think about, Jack, is Paul, is like, what is the auction experience like for a member, and what can people do to better prepare for it?
Sure, and that's a great question that everyone should be prepared for. And Jack touched on this earlier about getting ready the night beforehand.
Yeah.
So many things can occur in the day of auction that I always pack my car the night beforehand, like you said, have a lawn chair, maybe have a little table too. Have everything in your backpack, your laptop, tablet, whatever it is you need, your deals, if you're a wholesale, your business cards, food and water, all that stuff. And then leave for auction early.
Yeah.
I highly suggest that you arrive at 9 a.m. because if you're delayed, you'll be there at 9:30.
Yeah.
You want to know where you're going. That's one of the biggest problems. And our website under resources, you can click that and you can see all of our major auction locations with addresses, maps, key information about where you're going exactly. So you want to know where you're going, leave early so that you have time for parking. And things will pop off at 10 a.m. on the dot. So I always suggest be there at 9:30 to start talking to people. Start making connections. Go talk to your Roddy teams in the red shirts like I'm wearing. Ask every question you can, especially if you're new. Like Jack said, it's the best place, like Jack and Curtis said, it's the best place to network. It's better than AREA. People are actually investing here. They're doing it on site. You're getting experts. You're getting newbies, everything across the board. So show up early and talk to our teams. Do you have something more to add to that, Curtis?
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing, like Paul said, to get there early and you want to talk to the teams about I usually talk to people about what their game plan is for the day. So some people, say it's your first time at auction and your Roddy's report says that David Stockman is going to be the trustee for that. You want to know, who is David Stockman? Where does he stand? Because a lot of times what happens is, especially like a big county like Dallas or Tarrant, you'll have a trustee show up or multiple trustees show up. Everybody huddles around him, and you might have missed him and say, hey, my name is David Stockman, or my name is Shelly Orlani, or something like that. And so one of the things, most of the Roddy's employees or team members have been going to the same foreclosure auction for years or decades. I mean, you go to Dallas County, and Sheila, one of our most dedicated Roddy's members, has been going to Dallas, I think, for 20 years almost. So, or maybe even longer. It wouldn't surprise me. And so she knows exactly where those trustees are going to be. She knows what they look like. She probably will be able to tell you where they're going to go, what time they're going to show up. And I know in particular in Dallas County, Sheila is yelling every single time a trustee shows up with that trustee's name. So find a Roddy's member and talk to them about, hey, I'm here to see David Stockman, Shelly Orlani, and David Garfman, right? When do they usually show up? I'd write that down. I'd make sure you have an idea of where they stand, and just give us a heads up that you're looking for them. Usually if I'm at an auction and a member comes up and asks me a question about a particular trustee, I'll say, I think he's going to be over there, and he looks like this. I will come find you when he gets here, right? So our Roddy's members are there to help you be successful at auction. So make sure you know who you're looking for. Make sure your list is ready. Jack and Paul, I think you both have had a lot of experience talking to our members about, what should your list look like? How are you efficient at auction? Start with you, Paul. Can you talk a little bit about what that list should look like going into that auction?
Experienced investors will have all different kinds of ways they do this. Some people make their own spreadsheets. They'll put in their minimum bid, their opening bid, expect their maximum bid. But the number one thing I suggest, especially for beginners, is I suggest organizing by FLS ID number. That's the number in the left-hand column, sequential 1, 2, 3, etc. That, especially if you're new, that way when our team shouts out FLS 33, you can just scroll right down and immediately find the property. If it's organized somewhere else, you might not be able to find that property yet, and you're lost what's happening.
Yep.
And like I said, the more experienced members have their own ways of doing this, but I always suggest having that FLS ID number there. Now, if you're in somewhere like El Paso, make sure it's in clerk sort, because that's a different number they use.
I was going to say that, like, there's some trustees call it out differently. That's another reason to talk to. Get on chat, give us a phone call, or get there early to talk about how each trustee conducts their auction, right? Like in El Paso, Paul brought that up. There's really two main trustees, and they both call out the clerk ID number, and that's the only thing they'll do. They'll say kind of what they're required to do. They'll say clerk ID number. They'll say the legal description, and that's really about it. They're not going to say what the address is. A lot of trustees won't tell you what the address is, right? Luckily, we'll have Roddy's members there that can talk about the address. So if you go to Collin County this month and you see Amanda standing there, she's going to say Roddy's number 32, and that trustee is going to start talking about it. A lot of people say, what address is that? What is that? She's going to say 123 Main Street, and that's the reported address. A trustee won't tell you the address because that's not legally what they need to say. They need to talk to you about what that legal description is. They usually talk about the grantor. So I want to make sure that I can quickly find the legal description and I can quickly find the grantor of the property, because those are the names that I'm going to be listening to or for in case a trustee doesn't call out the address.
Correct. And that's another reason I suggest that our subscribed members, download their list to Google Drive as a digital PDF, because then you can search anything on that field. And even when you get our free sample list the day of, save it to Google Drive, because then you can search and use it that way.
Yeah. And Jack, you've done webinars on like how to read the list and things like that. I know. Can you talk a little bit about the different types of formats that we have? Like Paul mentioned, sort by ID, but we've got other ones like the auction format. Can you talk about the different types that you've seen people bring to auction as well?
Yeah. So the most popular one, I'll cover that because it's the best. It's called Auction Brief Report. There's a few auction brief reports, but there's only one called just Auction Brief Report without anything else on it. How that sorts is by trustee and then by borrower last name. And so you're over here, you hear the trustee and say they have like 9 listings. They're legally required, and they'll say the borrower's last name. It's in alphabetical order. It's the fastest way to find it. You can just have your notes on what your max bid would be on that. It's not the best for doing your research. So when you do your research, do the detail list and go drive the houses and do all this detail work. And then when you're ready to go to auction, I would just do the auction brief report.
Yep. Now the one thing I want to say about the auction brief report is that, let's say auction.com, that's who we've got on the posting, or that's what it looks like is on the posting. Make sure that you're not just looking at that. That's why I like to bring the auction brief report and the full auction report and the report sorted by ID, because let's say David Stockman or auction.com are the reported trustees. A lot of times there's a lot of trading going on between firms and trustees. And so David Stockman might not actually call what was filed by David Stockman. Correct. Or vice versa. David Stockman's the guy that's usually actually getting the postings a lot of times. So it might say Curtis Roddy, right? And but Curtis Roddy might sell that posting or trade that posting to David Stockman and ask him to cry the auction. And so if you don't see it under that trustee, I just want to be able to quickly go back to a different report and search by legal description or grantor. So that's another important thing that I think has kind of held people up in the past. So we'll get questions like, "Hey, I can't find it," and then we find it. It's just under a different trustee.
Yep. And that's part of why our auction teams are so important on site. Is they can help navigate those little things really quickly so that you can just hear the ID number and boom, there it is.
Yep, exactly. So yeah, I'd say ID, having everything sorted by ID is probably the most important, just because the Roddy's members are going to be able to quickly find that and tell you what the number is, and be prepared to be able to go look up that number. And I said I was going to keep this to 30 minutes, guys. So
we can keep going for hours. It's the problem.
Yeah, auction is probably the most exciting in our company. We talk about the foreclosure auction is Super Tuesday. It's Super Tuesday, first Tuesday of every month, and then the next week after that's Research Week. So we're always stoked about that too. We get to see all the new postings and the new opportunities for our members. out there. So is there anything else, Jack or Paul, that you think we should talk about before we conclude this webinar?
Have fun. Yeah, I would say have fun. Don't forget to have fun.
Yeah, definitely have fun.
Valuable information.
And we'll see you guys at 9 a.m. or 9:30 a.m. on Tuesday, on site in all of our major counties.
All right. Hey, we just had a question. Hey, we got. Can we stop by Roddy's in person and chat with them at the McKinney location? William, we don't. Our office isn't open without appointment. So I would say send Jack or Paul an email or get on our chat. They'll coordinate with the appropriate person to help you out. That's one thing we haven't really hit too much on right now is hitting that chat, like, right. It's not this bot that's monitoring it. It's you're not going to get a 30-minute response time during normal business hours. It's really Paul, Jack, and myself and Aaron monitoring that chat, and we're going to respond to you. So if you have a question, you can know that you're going to get a well thought out response. And so I'd say I'd really encourage everybody to ask any questions that you might have there in our chat. So you go to our foreclosure.info or flsonline.com. In that bottom right-hand corner of the screen, there's a chat bot or a chat box, not chat bot. We don't have that. And you can ask any questions there. You can also give us a call at 972-250-0993. We'll put that in the comments below too. And you'll get Mr. Jack Zagunis answering the call, or maybe Amanda Rowan answer the call and be able to answer your questions. Or if they can't answer, they'll make sure they're able to answer it. So we want to help you guys. Don't be scared to call us or chat with us or send us an email. Our goal with Roddy's is to make successful real estate investors in Texas, and that's what we're here to do. So with that, I'll say thanks, guys. We hope you guys have a great weekend and great time getting prepared for auction. We'll see you guys on Tuesday.
See y'all Tuesday.